It's the Polo Podcast. Welcome, everybody. Andrew's from Polo here. I have a beautiful special guest. Chad, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's been a long time coming, and your products are throughout the industry, and let's talk some science.
All right.
And
let's do it.
educate.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah?
Yeah, right on.
All right. So let's start by your company and the products that sell the most and what you think is sort of the most important thing to either start a tank or maintain a tank. Just let's hear your version.
Okay. So I work for a company called Mariculture, and we are the world's largest producer of marine microalgae concentrates. So for all of you viewers out there, that's phytoplankton or phyto that everybody refers to as. We're in California. We have about 3 million gallons of phytoplankton. We grow algae and sell it to people that are, for example, growing oysters. So if you're an oyster farmer and you want to raise oyster larvae or feed it to your brood stock.
That's a big deal there.
Yeah, phytoplankton is a very good food source for those animals.
Yep.
And so a lot of people rely on us for algae. They don't want to grow it. They don't want to deal with the contamination, crashing of cultures, setting up facilities to do it. So they prefer to buy it from us. And with our proprietary techniques, we're able to concentrate the phytoplankton so that the cell count is very dense. And so when people use it, it's more dense than if you were to culture it yourself. It's by far more dense. And so we started the company.
You hear that, Taris?
Nice.
Did you like that?
Yeah. It's incredibly unique what we do because we're able to separate the cells from the media, from the growing media, and concentrate them down into, we're talking billions of cells per milliliter, and you can't achieve that in an actual live algae culture. So it's something that's very unique globally, not just in the United States. And so with all that algae, we also started growing zooplankton. So different species of copepods that fit into aquaculture, into people that are breeding fish, as well as into the aquarium hobby. People that want to improve the zooplankton biodiversity in their systems, get copepods in there that are a food source for finicky fish like mandarins, pipefish, seahorses, butterflies, things like that. Yep. And also add to your cleanup crew. These animals also eat, nuisance algae and organic waste, things like that. So.
Now, do they feed SPS? Will SPS polyps grab that stuff or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. They for sure will. Yeah, and we also sell copepods that are concentrated and not alive, so that people don't have to grow them, don't have to repeatedly buy live cultures, and still provide the same nutrition from the copepod to the coral or to the fish. It's just a lot easier to use, and it's in a concentrated form in liquid suspension, which is basically our product line, Reef Nutrition, mostly liquid suspension feeds. So real easy to use. You can measure the dose.
Tiger pods, Oyster Feast, ROE, a brine in the bottle.
Beta brine, brine shrimp.
What else am I forgetting?
Rhodie Feast, which is a rotifer. Rotifers are very popular in clownfish aquaculture, for example. It's a good first live food organism for those animals. And it's all about the variety. For everything from oyster eggs, fish eggs, to fully grown brine shrimp and copepods. And so and also the variety of sizes. So to feed, SPS corals all the way up to LPS and anemones and larger animals.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you sell, let's go back to phyto. Do you sell mostly individual strains or do you sell a blend? And how good are these blends after a certain period of time in the refrigerator? Doesn't the nano consume them all like Pac-Man? Or a lot of them?
Yeah, so yes, we do provide single species concentrates as well as blends. And the algae species that we grow are the ones that are being used in aquaculture. We listened to our customers.
Right.
Our customers said we need diatoms. we offer diatoms. And you know, there's other varieties of algae that we provide.
And why would you need a diatom?
There's just certain nutritional qualities that diatoms have that other species of algae don't.
Okay.
And so that is required by certain animals that people are working with in food aquaculture.
Okay.
Shellfish and shrimp and oysters and things like that. And we also provide a blend of algae, and this is something that was pretty unique that we started. Basically, was like let's offer a blend of algae to our customers because a lot of times we get customers that don't know exactly what to feed their animals.
Right.
And so we're like, well, let's just throw everything at them,
right,
and and provide that variety, because each individual species of phytoplankton that we work with is nutritionally different than the next one, like vastly different. Things like fatty acids and carotenoids and things that algae synthesizes that animals do not. These things need to come from the diet.
Right.
And so we have species of algae that can be frozen for years. And the algae is no longer viable. You couldn't culture this algae, but the cells are fully intact. And so everything that was going on in that cell has stopped.
Frozen.
But, yeah, it's basically frozen in time.
Right.
And when the animal consumes it, it gets that nutrition. It gets all the nutrition that was already in there.
Right.
And so when it comes to the blends, because
blends in the refrigerator. That's sort of what I'm
the
trying
blends that we have for refrigeration, because it's in refrigeration, the algae is no longer replicating itself. It's no longer going through cellular fission. It doesn't need carbon.
Even
it
the
doesn't
nano?
need anything.
Even the nano?
Yeah, even the nano. Everything is basically arrested. It's stopped. And we consider it quiescent. So it's not alive, it's not viable, but it's not decaying.
Right.
And so in the bottle, in the refrigerator, there's no competition going on. Algae doesn't eat algae. In a culture, they would compete against each other for nutrient. And depending on the parameters that you're providing, higher temperatures, certain algae do better at higher temperatures versus others. And so when you look at a blend, that blend of algae is going to be the same as it was on day one, all the way to 6 months later.
Is that right?
Yes.
Under the scope,
right,
in a refrigerator, 6 months,
right,
same as the original.
Right, yeah, because it's nothing's going on. It's basically hibernating in a sense. And with our algae, we actually render it non-viable. And so there is no growth. There wouldn't be any growth anyway. But the way we harvest the algae is that the cells are fully intact when we put them in the bottle. And then we put them in our proprietary liquid suspension blend.
And what's in your blend? Which ones?
Well, it's on the label. The ingredients are on the label. So there's acids and things. We control pH.
No, but which strains?
Oh, which strains? So we work with. So I'm just going to do the genus. So Tetraselmis, Pavlova, which is one of the golden brown ones.
Right.
Tysochrysis.
Right.
We do a couple.
Which they just changed the name from ISO to Tyso.
Right. Yeah. And it's Tahitian. So Tysochrysis. We used to call it T-ISO, or that's for short.
It confused me for a while.
Yeah. And we also work with Nanochloropsis, which is one of the green ones. That's a very small cell size compared to all the others.
Right.
And then a couple.
And they outcompete though.
Nanochloropsis is a very robust species of algae. Yeah, if you put that in with any of the others, it's going to take over pretty rapidly.
And it gets very green.
Yeah, and when it's dense, it's green. Yeah, exactly. And Tetraselmis is an actually interesting one. It's very popular in shrimp farms.
Right.
Prevents something called Zoeis syndrome, which when shrimp are going through their different life stages as larvae, there tends to be some stressful changes happening, and Tetraselmis can help prevent that. We also work with a couple of species of diatoms. Thalassia syra is the genus.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I highly recommend anybody that is listening in on this to go look at images and microscopic images of these things. And also, some of them have motility, like Tetraselmis. It has flagella and can swim quite rapidly through the water column. Isochrysis also. Nanochloropsis has no motility. And so those are pretty much the main ones we work with, because those are the ones that shellfish, people with shrimp and oysters and clams, bivalves, abalone, things like that are working with. So, yeah.
So, if you were to feed a reef, and let's just talk about coral for the time being, how would you do it? How are you feeding a mixed reef or an SPS type dominant reef?
Right. Yeah.
What would be your first choice?
Yeah.
A little bit of this, a little bit of this.
Right.
A little bit of zoo, a little bit of other plankton, shake it up. put it in. How do you feel about these bacterial concoctions now? And is that something you would be working on, or is the bacteria human gut-loaded bacteria that the corals don't eat? Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, the whole bacteria thing is quite interesting.
It is,
to be honest, and I feel like it's in its infancy, which I feel like it shouldn't be. I feel like we should know a lot more about it.
Alan Vo sent me a sample, by the way.
Nice.
A jar.
Yeah.
I like the response. You sending me more?
Yeah, corals are very sensitive to certain, nutrients and things that are going on in bacterial cultures and phytoplankton cultures, and so they pick up on those things. We feed nitrogen to our phytoplankton, and
Right.
corals depend on that as well. But as far as our reef nutrition products go, our oyster feast, which is oyster eggs, ovarian tissue.
It's always good for a squirt or two in the shake.
It's very rich in fatty acids and amino acids, and it's really stimulating to corals.
Right.
They recognize it as
Yep.
this smells great to
Right.
them, to us,
Right.
not so much. But and then getting them into feed mode and getting them eating, following up with other things like the roti feast, which are rotifers that are fully enriched with phytoplankton. And so that's a great way to deliver the nutrition from phytoplankton to your corals, is to feed them an animal like a rotifer. Same with a copepod. Good way to deliver that nutritional quality of phytoplankton, because copepods primarily rely on phytoplankton as part of their diet.
Right.
And so,
And your copepods are infused with phyto?
So the ones that we get, that we buy, that are wild caught, harvested, they're just harvested, in their natural environment. So they're up there eating in the water column when they're being harvested, for sure. Yeah, and then the live ones that we sell, they're gonna be eating whatever that you have already in your tank, diatoms, and cyanobacteria, and things like that.
Right.
So. But yeah, it's always good to mix it up, like creating a cocktail like
Did you see that video
like you did the other day. Yeah, that was hilarious.
Video?
Yeah, I love that. Just shake it up and dump it in, and that's because we
Little bit of this.
Yeah.
And my stepson says, "Do you have a formula?" I'm like, "No, whatever I have in the cabinet, and just shove it in."
right. Yeah.
Little Ghani power.
Yep. Yeah. And everybody feeds differently, and you just and we always tell people, when you're feeding, make sure what goes in comes out.
Yeah.
Whatever they don't assimilate into their body, you've got to export that stuff out of your system. So watch with overfeeding.
I mean, if I was probably doing this right, I would come down in the middle of the night and do it. So I don't like to shut the skimmers off and then put them on in the morning with the computers and stuff. So I just leave them on while they're getting it, and it's cleared up in an hour or two.
Yeah, depending on the amount of mouths that you have in your system.
Right.
Yeah, the animals can soak it up pretty quickly, and especially like filter feeders and things like that really rely on small particle foods. That can be very important to them. And some people will turn off their skimmers. They'll put the skimmer on feed mode, so to speak, and just let their animals soak in that food, and really just take in as much as they can, and feed on it efficiently. So. Yeah, and that's another thing that people like about our products, because they're in liquid suspension. You can measure the food, and so if you're finding that you're overfeeding the food, but you're measuring it, then you can just feed less and keep measuring it.
What is that liquid suspension, by the way?
Well, it's RODI water
with
a sodium alginate. So this all food grade stuff. Obviously would have to be, and that keeps everything nice and suspended in the bottle, so there's no settling and any of that. And we also control the pH, so it depends on the product. And refrigeration is basically the major part of the preservation of the product. And so that's what it's people like about it. They don't have to reconstitute anything. They don't have to thaw anything. And so it's really easy to just pull it out of the fridge, squirt it into your tank,
easy.
and go about your business. Yeah.
Well, you squirt it in a shake.
Right. Yeah.
Mix
it up. Nice. Yeah.
So tell me, lot of dry rock, I mean, I never seen more problems with dinos and diatoms starting tanks now. It's like takes people out of the hobby almost. I assume that's the live rock, dead rock situation, although you probably can get them at any time. What would be your solution to that besides the UV sterilizer?
Yeah, that's a tough one because
you can get Marco Rock. I mean, there's a 9-month ugly stage that's just really not nice looking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, we used to get these amazing pieces of live rock from like Fiji and Tonga and, you name it.
Presto reef tank.
Yeah, and it had the microbiome. It had everything you needed. Of course, there were some things that you didn't want that came along with it.
Or mantis shrimps and stuff like that.
Flatworms and who knows, So there was bad with the good.
Right.
And so with all of this artificial rock or harvested rock that's dead, that's quite a challenge for people to create this microbiome that is similar to what's going on in the ocean. And I don't know if it'll be easy to achieve such things. I think the people that are selling some of these rock are now seeding it. They're setting it up in systems, allowing things to grow on it. And maybe they need live rock from the ocean to put it in there with that rock.
We do. That's exactly what we do. We start seeding with individual pieces, like one at a time.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that's a great idea. And then getting your zooplankton in there, and we have access to zooplankton now, copepods, more than we ever have, which is great. There's tons of people doing it, and so you can get those copepods.
Just feed on all that brown stuff.
Yeah, they eat the microalgae, they eat the bacteria, they eat that mucilage, that sticky stuff that grows on surfaces. The
stringy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They get eaten. They're a great food source. The copepods are one of the most abundant animals on the planet. They're very, very useful, not just in aquaculture for feeding to larval fish, but for improving the diversity of your system. We just don't need bacteria. There's other things that we do need in the system. So, yeah, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, it certainly makes starting tanks longer. I mean, I'm afraid to put corals in if I see dinos. I mean, they can look. We put in. I forget this story. We had a coral from Jake Adams. We had his red pipe organ, and it was doing unbelievable. And we moved it from one system into the other system that had dinos. Mm-hmm. It was gone within 2 days.
Here you go. Yeah. You almost need like a rock sharing program where you send good rock to somebody, they put it in their tank and get it going, and then they move it. It's important. All the stuff that we can't see, it's important to these systems for sure. And it's noticeable when it's not there.
Now, do you sell a lot of the brine? Is that a popular product of yours, or not really?
So we do so into the aquarium trade, into the hobby. We have the beta brine. So those are fully enriched brine shrimp. They're actually aquacultured. So they're enriched with microalgae, and so they have a good carotenoid content, good fatty acid content. Okay. So they're not just an empty kind of animal that's just mostly protein. Right. But we also sell the brine shrimp eggs, the cysts, and we sell a lot of those.
Shellless or
they're encapsulated, so they're they're encysted, and so we sell those into aquaculture. So people are hatching those for jellies and seahorses and other fish hatcheries and things like that. Right. So those are the primary ways that we sell brine shrimp. But we are looking to do live brine shrimp. Different stages, because we have plenty of phytoplankton, and so we could grow a lot of Artemia with it.
Now let's suppose my next cold water system, I decided to get some leafy, weedy sea dragons, and I need live mysis. Is that something that's on your drawing board?
It is something that
difficult, right?
Yeah, it's something that we're considering doing. Mysis are highly cannibalistic. And so you've really got to size separate those guys quite often.
They eat each other, huh?
Yeah.
Like a movie Alive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you don't separate them out, Yeah, continuously they will kill each other. They will eat each other. So those are challenging. But yeah, if you were to get something like that, I would highly recommend setting up your own cultures of those animals as well.
You would need to.
That way you would have your own on hand,
Right.
in house,
Right.
and then rely on an external source.
Right.
For some of those things, because we have companies that are working with oysters that they do grow some of their own live phytoplankton, but they also supplement with ours. Even though our algae isn't alive, these animals are still going to consume it. And so there's kind of this, they want to make sure that what they're doing is working on top of, buying something from an external source.
Tell me about the refrigerator. Is something special about that little refrigerator I see at the pet shop? It says
It's interesting.
It's a nice little refrigerator.
Yeah, refrigerators have come a long way. With the beverage ones with the glass fronts, it really changed the game when we're getting out of these home fridges that are these solid doors and getting into glass front refrigerators that are LED lit.
Yeah. Highlight the product.
Yeah, exactly. And you see a lot of these refrigerators in the aisles at grocery stores and home improvement stores, and these are some of the same ones that we offer, commercial grade refrigerators.
So a full refrigerator would have. Just give me. It'd have the ROE.
Yeah.
It would have the clam juice.
Oyster feast. Yeah, the oyster eggs. Yeah. Phyto feast.
It would have
the tiger pods.
A blended phyto probably.
Yeah, so our phytoplankton that we sell into the hobby is a blend. Six different species.
Right.
Yeah.
But you do sell them separately too.
We sell them separately. Yeah. It's just a hobbyist probably wouldn't buy the ones that we sell separately because it's a lot of phytoplankton. And we sell it in a 1 liter. For you, oh yeah, forget about it. Yeah, you would absolutely.
I got to pouring milkshakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Of each.
Yeah, you would go through quite a bit. You would go through as much as some of our hatcheries go through.
Right.
And so and then you would have the live tiger pods in there in the refrigerator. And so those are the top products that our stores typically carry.
And the tiger pods are different. Is that a different pod than another pod?
Yeah, the tiger pods are quite unique. They're more of a splash zone coastal copepod that are native from like Alaska down to like Mexico, the Baja Peninsula. And they're very hardy, very durable. We actually domesticated them because we've been growing them in culture for about 18 years. And so you see them in the refrigerator because they can tolerate refrigeration temperatures. They're eurythermic, which means they can tolerate a lot of different temperatures. Euryhaline to tolerate different salinities.
You're going to send me a whole bunch of pods. They're going to be tiger pods?
So the ones that I brought you are the Apocyclops panamensis, the apex pods. Those guys.
What's the difference?
Those guys are smaller. They reproduce faster, and they're more likely to permanently populate your system because they're less conspicuous. And
hide out like with hats and
exactly. They're the ghillie suits. Yeah, because the tiger pods are large. They're red from that carotenoid that they store in their body.
They almost look like cyclops almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that they get that from the phytoplankton they consume, and then they synthesize it and store it in their bodies. But the apocyclops we have found are better at populating the reef tank and being a permanent part of your zooplankton population.
Now, you don't sell any calanus, right?
No, we have not worked with anything like that. But we do sell a calanoid copepod, a pelagic copepod that we got from Karen Britton out in Hawaii. And so that one is very popular in aquaculture. So people were doing yellow tangs and these small larval fish. They need that small copepod nauplii, which is the larval form of the copepod, because their mouth is only so big.
Manny didn't tell. Where's Patty? Manny didn't tell us that secret.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and in those guys, it's real tricky because that copepod goes through multiple stages of development, and they need to get that first stage. And so they've got to separate that out right as it hatches and get it to their fish. Because as soon as it starts growing, it's too big, and the fish can't consume it.
Right.
And so we also feed all of our copepods our phytoplankton. And so with the calanoid, it needs to be fed live phytoplankton because they're very picky. But the tigriopus, the ticker pods, and the apex pods, they will eat non-viable phytoplankton. They do not discern. They do not care.
So just generally, what % of your sales go to aquarium hobby versus aquaculture and/or breeding?
The majority of our sales is going to aquaculture, global and domestic aquaculture, for sure. Yeah, I'd say the hobby is definitely in the 30 to 40% of
still
what we're
reasonable
doing, which
large,
which is good. We've got quite, we're spread out pretty nicely. We're happy about that. And then one of our top sellers is the Tigger pods, the copepods, and then the Oyster Feast and Phyto Feast. But yeah, globally, we're shipping algae to many different countries, into the EU, into Africa, Asia, and
for seafoods and, and all that stuff.
Yeah, for people growing food.
And how about
food
breeders? How
animals.
about to biota and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've got companies that are breeding fish and clownfish breeders that are using the phytoplankton to feed to their live feed organisms, to their
Rotifers and
copepods,
stuff.
to their rotifers,
Right.
to their brine shrimp,
Right.
To their mysis.
Right.
And,
as they get bigger.
Yeah, and feeding those animals, getting them to be nutritionally valuable, and then feeding them to their fish and to their invertebrates and things like that. And so we've got companies that rely on us 100% for our phytoplankton. They wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for our phytoplankton that we were able to offer them. Instead of buying the cow, they're buying the milk. Kind of thing.
Well, in relation to that, it requires sterile conditions and a lot of real estate space to do what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
This is not, I can't even look around my house and find a place to even do this.
Yeah.
That's true for most, right?
Yeah. It's space is an issue. Climate control can be an issue. Staff that are technical.
And they can crash very easily.
Cultures
things, right?
can crash. So you need redundancy. We're at 3 million gallons. We're on a very large scale. This
3 million gallons.
This is vastly different than anything else you would see from anybody else that's doing this. And we're continuously harvesting the algae. It is harvested 24/7. We're harvesting more algae in one day than all of our competitors combined can harvest in a year, for example. It's just that big. And we need to be that big because our customers need that much algae. And so that's what separates us from the pack when it comes to this kind of thing. So,
how big is that facility in California?
it's sprawling. We're on multiple acres. We use natural sunlight to grow our phytoplankton. We feed it a ton of carbon, so we have big CO2 canisters, and
they eat, CO2?
Well, that's one source of carbon for them.
Okay.
And we also make our own salt. We buy raw ingredients. We make cocktail for iron and different trace minerals and metals and things like that. So scaling it up was the most difficult thing you can imagine. It took a lot of perseverance.
How many square feet is this facility?
I don't know the square feet.
It holds 3 million gallons.
Yeah. And we're growing it in like ponds. So,
right.
but in a biosecure fashion.
But ponds are indoors?
Yeah, everything's inside the greenhouses. Yeah. And we don't allow visitors. We don't allow people to have dogs at the facility. We take biosecurity very seriously because if we get contamination, it can bring us to our knees.
Right.
We're done.
Right.
So we take it very seriously, and that's what our customers get. They get a biosecure product.
I never knew that. That's very interesting. I want to get a 3 million gallon koi pond.
Get a lazy river out there, and that'd be amazing.
So I have one tank back there that has a dino problem. We put a UV on. We're gonna get some pods in there. You're gonna get me those, right?
Yeah, I brought them. Yeah.
And I probably need to new tank. I have 3 new setups coming. One here, 2 upstairs. So we need a lot around the house.
Okay.
So we're gonna rely on you.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
You got me, right?
I harvest about 4 million a week of the Apocyclops. So,
and don't forget, I need a diatom strain too.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk for sure. Yeah.
Any event, I really appreciate it. I actually learned quite a bit. I had no idea how big your facility was, or. By the way, there are some new competitors showing up. Even Biota has phyto in suspension now in the bags and stuff. Have you seen those?
No, I have not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just noticing it.
Yeah, it's interesting
a lot
because
of suspension people around.
Yeah, nobody's doing it like we are. Nobody concentrates algae like we do. Nobody can provide the amount of biomass for your money that we do.
Now, we've ordered some stuff from Brine Shrimp Direct that has the unshelled brine.
Yeah, decapsulated.
Decapsulated.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with me putting that as food in the coral food, in my shake?
I don't see why not.
The fish eat it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
And when we hatch it, we infuse it with phyto. And
once it starts going through its different stages of development, you just start feeding it phytoplankton.
Right.
Yeah, and enrich it.
And
make it
even
valuable.
those three things take up a lot of,
Right.
It's a big PIA. It's a pain in the neck.
Right, yep. Everything takes up space. Yep, everything we do when we culture things. Yep.
So I appreciate it, Chad. I learned a lot, and you are the gorilla in the space, and I look forward to more chats like this and more nutrition. We'll as we get more information on this bacteria feeding and whether the corals consume the bacteria or not, or whether they consume the probiotic bacteria that's actually in our gut. That's a whole nother issue.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool.
We'll talk again. It is some cool stuff.
Yeah, there's still a frontier to be.
There is a frontier
to be explored. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
So I really appreciate you coming, and you got to set up your booth now and in the traffic in Secaucus.
Yep.
Good luck, and I'll see you there tomorrow.
Okay. Yep, absolutely. Right
Thanks
on,
for
Randy.
coming.
Yeah.
It's the Polo Podcast.